Good evening, everyone. Or good day. And welcome to Monster Party!
Monster Party!
Monster Party!
Monster Party.
Ooh, scary.
It's a scary show.
It is a scary show, but today and tonight, whenever you're listening, it's scary but kind of delightful.
In a very delightful kind of way.
That's right. Because, we have a special guest for this show. So many credits. A producer, a writer, an actor, a comic, a bon vivant, a raconteur, a libertine.
I am in awe to have this man
and a
here
magnificent artist, by the way, as
Yes.
well.
Yes.
God, we're going to need you to sort of rattle off some of your credits at some point. Ladies and gentlemen, let's please welcome JOHN MATTA.
John!
Right. Yay, Monster Party! Yay, Monster Party!
I bow to you, John.
So happy to have you here.
And who might you be, sir?
I am Matt Weinhold.
And I am SHAWN Sheridan.
I'm Larry STROTHE.
And I'm James GONIS.
And this is also a really great topic that we have today. All of us somewhat kind of experts in our own way. The theme of the show is horror hosts.
Horror hosts.
Horror hosts.
Remember those?
Yes. Remember those from the olden days?
Well, maybe if you're like in your 20s, you probably have no clue.
No.
Maybe, yeah.
What would you have? I mean, if you watched Me TV, you'd see son of Svengoolie.
Svengoolie is just keeping it alive.
Yeah, but how many of the kids are watching the Me TV?
Yeah, between reruns of Dragnet and The Untouchables.
Yeah.
Right.
There's a lot for the youth of America to
Perry
glom
Mason.
onto.
Right.
Yes.
Well, there were a lot of horror hosts starting in radio, actually, but with television. I mean, for me, growing up in Northern California, the big thing for me was, this is back in the 70s, Matt. Bob Wilkins the host was Bob Wilkins on a show called Creature Features.
Of course, yeah. Kind of, again, we did an episode about sort of our origin stories.
Yeah.
Talk about something that formed us and made us.
I mean, totally.
It's Creature Features.
Creature Features was fantastic. Creature Features, it started out, I guess, on Saturday nights. It would be a Saturday night.
I saw the first show.
Did you really? You saw the first show?
I did see the first show. I remember distinctly the show, the movie, and how happy I was.
What was it?
It was the horror of Party Beach.
That was the premiere
very first
episode.
Yes.
That was like 1970, 1969.
I want to say 1970.
Yeah, yeah.
So you were 5?
Wow.
Wow.
And affected me like no other thing. And then Bob Wilkins with his just. Because, I even at that age, I was aware that there were other hosts that were kind of looked like Dracula.
Like a vampire or a
kind of
monster or something.
But Bob Wilkins comes out and he's just this dry, regular guy. And for a second there, it's like, wow, a regular adult likes the same stuff as I do.
He had blonde...
and he lives in a dungeon.
Yeah, blonde hair, these big, thick black glasses, and kind of a soft voice. And he would always start up by lighting this candle that was on a skull. And then he would just talk in this,
and then smoke a cigar.
Smoke a cigar. That's right. And then he'd just talk in this very kind of soft voice. But
I think I step back for 1 second there, just to kind of set basically the stage for what we're talking about here. Oh. This is in the 60s and 70s.
I like Larry. I guess if you want to do that. I mean, if you want to make this understandable to a regular audience, fine. But
the whole idea that this is before cable television, this is before VHS, before DVDs, where growing up as a monster kid, a monster sci-fi horror fan, you
5 channels tops that we could get.
Yeah, exactly. Where you would scan through the TV guide and mark the horror film that was on that
and
night.
we all did this, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it was a special thing to stay up at night and watch a horror film. And even cooler was if you had a kind of a guide or a companion with you to watch those movies with, and that was the horror host. Right. And it was kind of like the horror host was bringing you this movie. And at the commercial breaks, they would come on, do a little skit or talk about the movie or whatever. And that person was like your friend for that night that you're watching this movie. That was some cool, whatever, Godzilla film or scary horror film. It was a very special kind of relationship that you had.
And I really do relate to the whole friend thing too. And that's what was great about Bob Wilkins and some of the hosts that we talk about is that there was a nice line of they like this stuff, but they could also mock it and like it at the same time.
Right, in a kind of loving way.
Like your friend. Like your own friend who would sit, you watch a movie and you go, oh, that's so cheesy, but I love every moment of this.
Now, Matt and I, we were growing up on the West Coast. John, you were on the You were on the East
I
Coast?
was on the East Coast, yeah. I grew
Okay.
up in Jersey. The good thing about growing up in Jersey was you got all TV from Philadelphia and New York. So
Right.
you kind of got two different things.
Oh.
The first host I remember seeing was Zacherley.
Wow, you actually saw Zacherley?
Wow.
But he was always kind of around. I think he stopped in the 60s, and then they would bring him out every year for Halloween.
Yeah.
And then he was on the radio on PLJ, I think it was. So he always kind
was
of
on the
got
radio?
Yeah, so
Wow.
he did. That's where
Wow.
he finished up his career. But he was always kind of around, and they would always show clips of him. So, and I always remembered the big stand-up of him in the back of comic books that you could buy.
Also on
there.
Famous Monsters. He
Yeah,
was
yeah,
That's
there,
right,
too.
Captain Company.
which was fantastic. And then he showed up. I remember he showed up on Captain Kangaroo for a bunch of years. And
He
as
was
a
on
kid-
Captain Kangaroo?
Really?
And then,
As Zacherley?
no, he just
As the mailman.
he still had the big bag of eyes.
No.
As the guy you weren't allowed to be near.
You mean like that's the strange? No, I watched Captain Kangaroo a lot. No, it wasn't exactly what.
No,
what-
and it freaked me out as a kid because I didn't understand people could be more than one thing.
right. I got
And
it.
that kind of made me nervous. But then,
Like he's getting ready to murder all of them. Like, this is all just a ruse.
need a
to
ride
get-
home, Mr. Green Jeans? And then,
Gee, whatever happened to Dancing Bear? Hasn't been around for a few weeks.
but then Dr. Shock, who was out of Philadelphia, Dr.
Right,
Shock,
right.
and he had a really thick Philly accent, and it was on, I think, like Channel 17 or something. He freaked me out at some point. He had an interview with John Carradine.
Wow, really?
And they were talking, and John Carradine, you could still remember when his hands
Yeah,
looked
he had
like
the
two
bad-
flippers?
Severe arthritis.
And it really scared me of two adults talking to each other. And
like scarier than any of John Carradine's movies.
Yeah.
Is that?
and I bailed on Dr. Shock. And then when I got in college, Stella was a she was the man-eater from Manny.
Kind of like a buxom redhead,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
what was her outfit like? Stella's.
tight kind of outfit, push-up
Yeah, lacy,
bra.
I think, maybe, yeah.
And when I was in college, I remember writing a letter to them of saying, hey, I'd like to, because the thing that I loved about, like you guys talking about too, is it was like watching it with a friend, and you didn't really have pals to really watch movies. Your parents just didn't let your friends over at 8 o'clock at night.
It was kind of a loner experience
Yeah.
where,
Yeah.
especially as a kid, you grew up, your parents are asleep, your brothers and sisters are asleep, and you're staying up because you want to watch the brain from Planet Arrows
Yeah.
or
Right.
Yog Monster from Space.
Right.
You're going to stay up to watch that.
Yep.
And I'm banging my head against the corner of a desk to
stay
stay
awake.
awake,
Right.
so I could get through this movie.
Yeah, you know, it's funny.
the worst thing-
You had that problem. I did. I would stay
Oh
up.
my God, the worst
I-
thing in the world is to fall asleep during the last 20 minutes of the
But
movie.
so how did you? So did you just wake up at 5 or something? And
no.
How did you stay awake? You just had that excitement and adrenaline.
I think so because it was my like Sean. This was my special time with
yeah,
the TV.
you
You
struggle
know?
to do it. And also because a lot of these programs they were double or triple features.
Yeah,
And it was
yeah.
usually the second or the third movie that you really wanted to see.
The double
Right,
feature
yeah.
is what was my
too
demise.
much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you have like a giant Mr. Pibb with you or something like that going?
I think it was Tab.
Yeah, I tell you.
My mom's tab as I'm
right.
putting water in it like I would with booze later on.
No, I think realistically, this is back when soda
Just
came
sucked on a tea bag.
in the glass bottles, and my dad would buy
Oh, right,
Pepsi,
right.
and it was like a special treat.
Or just eat a bunch of candy and stay awake and a
no,
sugar
we
fix.
didn't get a lot of candy.
My mom had Fresca, so
Yes, I remember,
I was
yeah.
shit out of luck. Yeah.
right.
Didn't it also depend on whether the movie engaged you, though? I mean, I remember falling asleep
Yes.
if it was a boring movie.
Sure.
Yeah, but even like okay, so this I remember distinctly, and talk about this was the second feature of Creature Features, and I know like the first one was something like a fine movie, but like Murders in the Rue Morgue that
Yeah.
I'd seen a bunch of times, and
Right,
okay,
right.
it's a gorilla, and there's
Right.
there's Bela Lugosi, okay, fine. So but the Time Travelers.
oh,
yeah. That was a cool one. In color. and
Yeah.
something,
Weird
And,
one too.
Yeah, and I saw that they ran a little trailer for it, and there's androids and
Yeah.
spaceships.
That was like
and
a
time
quintessential late night movie at the
Yes.
There
time.
was some
Iv Melkor and
I Melkor, yeah.
freaky
I-
people with
Melkor?
freaky hands or
Sid
things.
Pink, I think, maybe. Yeah.
But it looks so crazy and unusual, and I was like, "Oh man, I'm gonna do this! I'm gonna make it!" And then like, I think I have like a fever dream memory of the title coming on, and That's it. And then I just woke up in the street outside my house. And I was like, what happened?
And this was like syndicated TV channels, right?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it was like these like Channel 5 or Channel 11. They would just run old movies. Again, it's so different from today. Where there's 200 channels, and it's like we have all these cable channels. But this was like, oh yeah, Channel 5. They would just throw these obscure movies on late at night to fill the hours.
And everyone had their own horror show host.
Yes, right.
And then
Yes.
when you'd hear like Ghastly Graves out of Florida or something, they never sounded as cool as your guy.
Yeah.
It was like morning DJs, like, hey, we got Man
Sure.
Cow. Yeah, I'm sure he's great.
right.
But
And definitely not.
they never sounded as cool. They're guys, but then I had a cousin. I remember getting tapes of Ghastly Graves from Florida, and guys would just start sending. Your pals would just send you, and you go, these guys are all pretty great.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
are good.
yeah.
But in San Francisco, now you should remember this, I think,
Yeah.
James, Larry.
Yeah, get it right.
Which one is Mr. Interiors?
That's my buddy to my left. But go ahead. What you were saying?
Admiral Interiors.
Yes.
So now around the time of Creature Features,
Yeah.
there was a syndicated show from Cleveland, The Ghoul. Do you remember that?
No, I didn't.
And it was on
no.
UH. It was on
UHF.
UHF.
Yes.
UHF.
And that was the one where your channel, it's like you kind of had to
Dial it in.
Dial it
Yeah.
in.
It was like
not
Radio
it was not-
Free Europe,
Yeah,
like-
it was like
Yeah.
like a radio where you're trying to get it
Yeah.
in. And did you have one of these antennas that we had one of these antennas you could have a little remote thing that
the
would
clicker.
turn it and it would go click, 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 and the antenna would move on your on
But the
your
click
roof.
was just different
Yeah.
gradations of snow.
yeah, and yeah. So
But luckily, I got a pretty good reception where I was because my house was pretty close to the main
the new
TV
tower,
tower.
the
Yeah.
tower. So you
I
got the.
think that helped.
You got the Ghoul. Then
I
You
did
saw-
get the Ghoul.
I did
and
not.
the Ghoul was from Cleveland. It was Ron Swede.
Yeah.
And it was sort of like a sequel to like a Ghoulardi.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and he was kind of
Ernie
like a beatnik kind of guy,
Yeah,
right?
Which was Ernie Anderson.
Ernie Anderson.
right.
Yes.
Now, wasn't Ernie Anderson the one the voice of ABC? Like he would do the commercials.
Yeah.
You're watching the
Yes.
Love,
Yeah.
That's
right.
Ernie Anderson.
That was him.
He's the father of director Paul Thomas Anderson.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's right.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow,
see,
this has come full circle.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we didn't have when I was a kid too. I didn't have color television. My family didn't get a color TV till I got in college.
Wow.
So I was a sophomore in college when I found out The Wizard of Oz went to color.
Wow.
And it really freaked me out. But then when I got home, I think my parents were just waiting for me to leave because then they had cable. And my brother, have you heard of David Lee Roth? He's showing it. I'd never heard it. Like I knew of MTV, but we didn't have cable, so it was always black and white to me.
Right.
My dad too was not big on replacing when the plastic channel changer broke. So
Right.
we had
Right.
pliers.
Pliers, right?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, the
And
famous
in
pliers.
theory, for 14 cents at a hardware store, we could have gotten another one, but we just would have kept breaking it because we did what every kid did.
Why
You
pay
just-
14 cents when you can get a really good pair of pliers for $5.99?
The notion of a remote control was like science fiction.
Oh, no,
That was
no,
like
yeah.
No, wait, can we get back to The Wizard of Oz? Because when you saw The Wizard of Oz, then finally in color, did you go, well, why didn't they colorize the rest of the movie? Like, were you freaked out by that? Like,
I remember the clip when it would happen, the little blip that, and I just remember watching, that's odd. And then when I saw it, for a moment, I got a little angry at my parents. And, they're paying for college. So then it worked out fine.
So all the films that you saw with
Black
your
and
horror
white.
host, even if they weren't in black and white, you saw in black
Everything
and white.
was in black and white.
Right, right.
Wow.
which works pretty well.
Yeah,
For
yeah, actually
horror.
does.
If you're going to pick a genre,
Right, right.
that's a good
Definitely is.
one.
And there was for me, I grew up actually in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And one of the most famous horror hosts was a Pittsburgh-based host on Channel 11 at the time. I think he started in the mid-'60s, and it was Chilly Billy.
Chilly Billy?
Bill Cardile. He was known as Bill Chilly Billy Cardile, and it was Chiller Theater, and he was kind of like Bob Wilkins in that he
Yeah.
was like a regular guy
Yeah.
in kind of like a suit, and he would kind of do he would kind of sit in a chair, and it was like a laboratory backdrop,
Right.
And which I always remembered as a kid. It was just like a painted kind of backdrop, but it was just something you always remember. And he would do skits and stuff like that, and do giveaways and talk about the movies. But very charming guy, and he, of course, he actually is in the original Night of the Living Dead.
Is that right?
He's one of he's one of the reporters.
He's one of the reporters.
Yeah. And not only that, but then Bill Cardile's daughter, Laurie Cardile, was the star of Day of the Dead.
That's right. Oh
my God.
Yeah, so there's that whole heritage there.
Wow.
And I believe he's still around and still doing stuff. But his show, I think, went on to the early 80s. But Chiller Theater, I really remember well. In fact, the theme music of Chiller Theater was the theme from Experiment in Terror by Henry Mancini. Had this really cool kind of jazzy kind of scary theme. Yeah, and that was always the theme that stuck in my head. So that was the first horror host. My earliest years, I remember watching Chiller Theater.
It's funny you mentioned the music or something, because Feature Features had its own special music too. I mean, do
the first one first.
Well, what was cool is that it starts out with there's a little thunder, and then it goes into it's kind of cool.
It's kind of funky.
Yeah.
Feature that awful creature. Can you picture?
Yeah. All right, that's my groove.
And they would show clips.
That's my jam.
Right.
And they just clip and clip and clip, but then they had to say who the host was, and this is what I remember all the time. Here we go.
Now the strangest thing about this show on tune is its host, Bob Wilkins, and he brings it to you.
I just love.
And that's what that right there was when my acid would start to peak.
Yeah. Well, I had a different
and he was
feeling.
San Francisco based, correct?
But now wait a minute. Hold on.
It was Channel 2, which was in Oakland.
Okay.
And it played throughout the Bay Area, but there are people that as far down in Salinas and
He also had a Sacramento show.
There was a Sacramento show,
right.
but I didn't get the Sacramento show. But we got the.
But now to point out that is the second theme, because I remember when I first heard that theme, it was a replacement to the first theme, which is dramatically different. That's funky and it's modern. Whereas the first theme, do you have that ready?
No.
No.
You mean
all right.
Boy,
that went nowhere. Okay.
You mean that first one?
We'll revisit this.
How many years was he on for?
Like 7 or 8 years. He did it from about 1970 to 79. Then it was taken over by John Stanley. Now, John Stanley was great too. Now, I know there
in a different way.
Well, see, there are people in the Bay Area who feel like, oh, Bob Wilkins is my horror host, and he's the one who I love, and John Stanley, he had too much information. The thing I loved about John Stanley was Bob Wilkins was great. He would talk about the film. He'd always make a little fun of it, and there would be some guests every once in a while and stuff. But John Stanley went. I mean, every show.
He really genuinely loved the
genre. And the funny thing is Bob Wilkins was really not exactly a big fan of the genre, really. He was actually a marketing guy, really.
Yeah. But he was the funnier of the two.
Yeah, totally. Look, he was funny. No, John Stanley would actually do
more informational.
He did,
right?
but he was great, Sean, because he would actually go out and he would actually go to I remember his first episode, one of his first official episodes, he was invited to see a brand new horror film called Phantasm. And he did this whole thing on Phantasm.
Yeah, cool.
And we could talk about Phantasm a lot, but
we will.
But John Stanley would go to all of these movies that were like opening up. I remember he had a big thing about the movie Carrie. When Carrie came out, they actually had a contest. You send in a letter, and if you were chosen from from thousands of people sending in their invites or their letters, you will get to sit in a huge theater all by yourself to watch Carrie. And they had this woman won, and this woman won. This woman won, and they had a camera on her, and they filmed her watching the movie.
Freaked out.
That sounds
weird.
great.
Yeah.
That sounds bizarre.
But I think Stanley did a lot of great.
And then John
things.
Stanley just sitting under the screen staring at that woman. Is it good? Are you enjoying yourself?
No.
You get to drive to a drive-in theater with your car all by itself and watch the movie.
Look,
you get to buy yourself a ticket.
The other thing, look, guys, hey, let's stay on focus, okay?
We are on focus.
John Stanley wrote this amazing book called "I Was a TV Horror Host," which basically gives you all this.
Okay.
And to our listeners, if you haven't seen this book or read this book, you should check it out because it has everything in there about just about every horror host from radio and television.
Wow.
And so I love John Stanley.
And I love his. I love the fact that he loved the genre. He would also do these little movies that were in between
Yeah.
the films that he would show that were never funny.
Well,
but you gave him credit for at least trying to do something different
Yeah.
and keep this show alive. And I loved him for that.
Yeah.
And he also put out some movie guides. The
Oh, a
Culture
bunch of
Features
movie
Guide to the
guides,
movies,
yeah.
and
And this was
those
actually-
are. Those are one thing
Hey,
I learned
hey.
about those. But no, you're going to let me talk.
Okay.
Those books.
Yes.
Again, I give him credit for putting them together.
Okay.
But he did not have always the greatest taste.
Well, sometimes I think some of the because I had those books too, some of the early versions, and obviously some of the movies that he gave reviews for he didn't actually see. You could tell, like he just he makes a joke about them. Like some of the reviews are very, very uninformed.
I
flippant
think John Stanley saw every one of those movies. Now Leonard Maltin, on the other hand, though. I don't know, but I think
What?
Leonard Maltin had
Well,
people.
Leonard Maltin had a
Huge
staff of
partier,
30
though,
people.
Leonard Maltin, though.
Yeah,
Huge
yeah.
partier.
Yeah.
Hey, look, with all the ladies that Leonard Maltin had, do you think he had time to watch all those fucking movies? No.
But these two guys, Stanley and Wilkins, they were, I think, a little unusual in the horror host canon because they were not portraying a character. Like
They were a count,
Right.
or a
Right.
doctor,
Right.
or
Count Gord Duvall.
Chili Billy the same way. They weren't.
Or
They weren't.
Vampira.
They were right. They weren't dressed up as a vampire. Like right.
yeah.
or Elvira. I mean,
Yeah, right,
now
right.
Elvira's someone that was in the L.A. area.
When Elvira first appeared on the scene, I loved it. It was like this was like
I love her now.
early 80s. Yeah, early 80s where like
Yeah.
there was pretty much a dearth. I mean, there weren't really any horror hosts, and she kind of brought it back alive. And it was, I think it was Channel 11, Fox or whatever, and she showed all the same kind of old obscure horror films, and it was great. And she was funny. John Paragon was a performer and a writer on the show, and I loved it. I still like her.
A hot,
And
sexy,
she was,
yeah.
and no
funny
one,
woman
Nobody
dressed up
looked
like a vampire?
Yeah, no one looked like her, and she
No,
was
no.
hot.
Well,
and
but
she,
Well,
here's the deal. You know
There
who
was-
did look
there was
like her?
controversy,
Is
yeah.
somebody named Vampira.
Oh,
Mila Nurmi,
Okay,
yes,
okay,
yeah.
Matt, you know what I'm saying. At that time,
At that time, yes.
I know
At
there
the
was.
time,
I know there was
sure.
a big issue about
Yeah.
Vampira.
Right.
Litigation.
Yeah.
Right, about kind of the idea that Elvira kind of stole a bit of the concept or the
You know,
look
and you
of
could
her.
argue that, like, was Vampira doing it at that time? No.
Right.
What is stealing and what is homage? You know,
it was stealing.
well, but I would argue for Vampira or Elvira,
Elvira.
that Elvira was a different character.
She took it kind of. It was almost like a Valley
was-
Girl kind of.
yeah, it
kind
was
of like
a very
approach
different
to
character.
It. Yeah.
than Vampira.
Vampira was kind of like an actress, and she was doing
Yeah,
that.
it was Gary
scream.
Dracula
She's
lady.
always
Right,
trying to
right.
be creepy. Whereas Elvira's all, "Hey,
Goofy.
look at this! Wow, boy, those funny things just
Right, and she
dropped
would make
from
fun
the
of
ceiling."
herself.
Yeah,
and-
exactly.
yeah, it was a different character, but the look
but
was.
you know,
something.
hey, maybe
It
you
was
could,
close.
But
It was
hey,
closer than I would ever be comfortable borrowing from somebody.
And what if you slipped her a few $1,000 every month to keep her alive?
It really would have helped.
Right?
It did.
I went to Mila Nurmi's funeral.
Wow.
Wow.
I did. I went to Vampira's funeral with Dana and Dana Ghould. Dana Ghould, my good friend and mentor.
and a frequent Monster
and
Party
frequent
guest.
Monster Party guest. He invited me to the funeral. He said some lovely words about her. They became friends towards the end of her life
Yeah, I didn't know that.
because, and helped her when I think he met her doing some sort of interview, struck up a friendship, and then there was a point where he went over her place and her place was just falling apart. So he actually went into I think it was either like Dark Delicacies or Halloween Town or one of those stores, and went in and saw a bunch of people there and pointed at a picture of Vampira and went, "You know who this person is? Yes. Help her move." Okay. And that was it. That's all it took. And he really helped her towards the end of her life and said how funny she was and how profane but yet just witty and great. And not a big fan of Elvira.
Well, it's funny you should say that because I think people who don't know her. I mean, I don't think there's any footage of her.
There's one existing
little tiny
clip.
movie that has her excerpts with it, but unfortunately, no, she was too early for me to have grown up and to have
But see,
watched
most
her.
people think of when they hear her name, they think of the movie Ed Wood when she's
Or Plan
portrayed.
9.
Right, Plan
but
9, right.
in Ed Wood, she's portrayed by Lisa Marie, and she's kind of a bitchy character. She's kind of a bitchy person, and not
Right,
very
right.
fun, and not very.
Well,
Well,
kind of
but who-
bitchy hot though.
Well, that is
Bissy
true.
hot,
She
yes.
is. Yes,
she does.
is hot.
She's a little skeptical in the beginning, but I would think you would be.
You're in Hollywood.
Yeah. Who is this weirdo? Who is a weirdo?
Yeah. This transvestite keeps calling me up at 4 a.m. Maybe I'm not going to pick it up this time.
I mean, I think it's
Precisely.
She's safe to say she was one of the, if not the first true genuine horror host
For television.
Right? I mean, Zacherley
yeah.
for right. I mean, yeah.
But I think a lot of people made money off of her image.
Oh, definitely.
More than Elvira kind of stuff. I really understand what you guys are saying. She really took it a different direction just because she wore a tight dress. If I was, I would have been not comfortable with it also. But Elvira, it was a different thing.
Well, it's one of those things too that I go to that
And they do
place.
steal from each other. I mean, that's the horror show hosts. Everybody kind of grabbed from everybody else.
Totally.
Yeah,
right.
if you think you're gonna be the only Count blah de blah,
Yeah.
Right.
forget it. It's
Hey, I
not-
dress up like a vampire and come out of a coffin.
Wait a minute, I do the mad scientist castle.
Yeah.
No.
But isn't it true? Like a lot of your first exposure to the horror films that you loved as a kid and love today was with these horror hosts, right?
Completely.
Well, for me, I grew up when I was a really little kid seeing horror movies for the first time. It was without a horror host. It was in Massachusetts. There was a double feature every Saturday night called Classic Horror, and there was no host. The opening montage was silent scenes from Universal horror movies with sound effects playing in the back, thunder, and some organ music. That was it.
Wow.
And
So
then,
a sound effects album was your horror host.
basically. And then even after I moved to New York when I was like 9, I didn't really have the benefit of seeing anybody who was syndicated. I guess Zacherley at some point did get syndicated in New York, but I don't remember ever seeing him.
Well, were you aware of these guys at that time?
No, I didn't even know they existed. The first horror host I was aware of, ironically, was Count Floyd from SCTV.
Really? Wow.
Maybe the best horror host ever.
Yes, absolutely.
Floyd.
Yeah.
One of the. I remember when it dawned on people that it was Floyd Robertson. So it was Joe Flaherty playing Floyd Robertson, the newscaster, playing the horror show.
That was the genius of SCTV is that that was your springboard for parodying movies and TV shows by being it took place of the characters at that TV studio.
Yeah.
And a lot of horror hosts were news guys.
Yes, news guys.
Weather guys
right.
who were moonlighting.
So that was so genius.
When people it hit them that, wait, he's doing Floyd Robertson's doing Count Floyd? Oh, my God. It was such a weird realization. I got it right away, and it made me laugh so hard as a kid.
Well, and also the shtick was perfect because how many of these movies, some of them weren't even horror. Some of them were really pathetic, low budget shit.
Well, no, one of the classic ones was like he never knew until the last minute until he was broadcasting what movie he got. He'd be like, "Oh, okay, kids, we got a scary one for you. It's a Ingmar Bergman film, Whisper of the Wolf." You would think it's scary to be not being able to cope with life? That's scary. I mean, it's genius.
And then they'd show a scene, and then they'd come back to him. He just looked confused. Yeah, like,
Where'd he go? Oh, scary.
scary dialogue. Oh.
and then he'd howl.
Yeah.
When he didn't have anything else to do, he just like how.
The shame of this is that it's not like he was a real horror host. It's almost like you wish he was.
Oh my God!
I mean,
and he'd always try to be like a huckster, trying to get money from his viewers. He'd be like, "Oh, this is in 3D. Send $25 to me, and I'll send you these glasses."
That was like a soupy sales thing.
Yeah, totally. Oh, it's great.
But you know what? But that kills me too. The whole 3D thing, which has become almost like the trademark of Count Floyd in a lot of ways. But where I remember the first time they tried to do the 3D films on like regular TV.
Elvira did it with it too. Yeah,
Bob Wilkins, I think,
Bob
even
Wilkins,
did it,
I think,
or
did it.
at least John Stanley. And you like send in your self-addressed stamped envelope, and then you'd get these, these red and blue glasses, and you go, well, that's kind of,
Turn up the tint, put wax paper on the screen, and there are all these rules.
Yeah, boy.
sit exactly 10 feet. From the
One
screen.
eye,
I guess-
40 degrees closed.
Hey, that lamp is kind of coming out at me. Yeah, oh my.
But there were a lot of horror hosts like in between then. Like I was thinking, remember Commander USA?
Oh yeah, and that was like early 80s, right? Mid 80s, yeah.
What was it called? It was Groovy Movies.
Yeah, it was like a superhero.
And he had his character Lefty.
Yeah, with
He was
his hand.
superhero, which he would use his cigar and draw a face on his hand. He was on USA for 2 years.
The early years of USA.
serious?
Network.
That.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Played a superhero.
He was okay. So he was a superhero, Not
But
necessarily
he showed horror shows,
Yeah.
horror movies, and then Joe Bob Briggs.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay, so you were a fan.
Monster
Were you a
Hose.
fan of Joe Bob Briggs? 'Cause
Never.
I had an issue.
Why is that?
Okay, I saw him do something that pissed me off so
Okay,
much.
let's hear it.
Yeah.
All right. So so it seemed like Joe Bob Briggs. He'd kind of
Redneck who loved horror movies.
Yes.
Why wouldn't I like that?
Okay,
Theater.
because of this. I was so mad.
Here
This
we
is what
go.
happened. One of my favorite films, science fiction films of all time, Forbidden Planet.
Okay.
And he had Anne Francis on, who was the star of Forbidden
Sure,
Planet.
yeah, sure.
Very
Delicious.
hot lady.
Yeah.
And he's interviewing
Honey
her.
West.
Yes, and he's interviewing her. And the interview is going great. She could not be more charming, more wonderful. She was lovely, okay? And he says to her, well, Anne, I have a surprise for you. I mean, we actually have with us the original Robbie the Robot. And from the movie, The Robot. And her eyes just kind of popped out. And she was and she kind of looks around. And I'm I love Robbie the Robot. And here I was. I wanted to see the original Robbie the Robot. And there was this curtain and it pulls apart and it goes, here it is, Robbie the Robot. And it was this garbage can that had like a couple little red lights. And you saw on Anne Francis' face the disappointment. And I'm like,
Okay.
you bastard.
Okay,
I
no,
was
wait a
so
minute.
pissed.
Hold on
No,
now.
John, I was
Hold on
pissed.
now.
Really
And it was
uncool.
that moment. No, look.
Hold on now.
I can understand if you want to do have a little fun little joke, but that was darn right mean.
Okay.
And I've never forgiven him
All
for
right.
that.
Okay.
Sacrilegious.
Here's my theory. Okay.
What is your theory?
My theory?
Yes.
And forgive me.
Yes.
But I think you may have been projecting a little bit onto Anne Francis your own disappointment.
No.
I bet Anne Francis knew all along.
No.
that there was-
Matt, the camera was on her, and I saw when the camera was on her, and the curtain. She looked so excited, and then the disappointment on her face. It was like you just took a kid's favorite toy and just crushed it or
Okay.
ripped it apart.
Now I'm positive you're
No,
projecting.
No.
onto Anne Francis.
And Joe Bob Briggs goes, and there it is. Look, it's Robbie. There he is.
And you don't
Robbie
think
the
she was
Robot.
acting because she's an
No,
actress?
no,
She was in
no,
Forbidden Planet.
No, you could see that first initial reaction.
So what
I'm
you're
sorry.
saying to me
Yes.
is that she had been waiting her entire life to reconnect with Robbie the Robot.
Okay.
She finally had her chance on the Joe Bob Briggs show, and her dreams were dashed.
Now, let me tell you something about that robot. First of all, that robot was repaired and it was fixed by Fred Barton.
Yes.
It is now belongs.
I'm gonna get one.
But the original. Is
No,
in
I'm not
some,
gonna get
no,
the
no,
original,
the original is
no.
in someone's house. It's in a
You have
collector's
to
house.
ruin everything.
No, I'm just saying. I mean, the original and that robot only comes out once in a great while. Okay, sometimes at special conventions or something. I really thought that she was going to see the real Robbie the Robot.
I actually-
You thought.
and I was crushed, and she
were
was crushed too. No, man, no, you were there. You were there. No, I don't know why you're laughing because it's not funny.
I actually own the garbage can robot. Just so you know.
Here,
to
Matt,
let you
open
know.
up your curtains. There he is.
Look, Bill.
Oh, wait, that's just your regular garbage can
Bill
with
Malone.
Chinese food in it.
Bill Malone, very talented director, owns Robbie, the original Robbie the Robot.
yes.
And the robot, because it's very special. It's
Right.
very fragile
It's
and stuff.
fragile, yes.
But it has gone out to make appearances. And I thought that Joe Bob Briggs made arrangements to get the robot there, and he didn't.
When we have Joe Bob Briggs in the show,
No, he's not
you
going to
can-
come on that show. He's not coming on this
Oh,
show.
oh, he is.
Oh, no, he's not.
In fact, behind this curtain,
Joe Bob Briggs
John-
in a garbage can.
No, okay, so no, getting back to John. So, John, were you a fan of Joe Bob Briggs?
No. No, not at all.
Why not?
I just didn't care what he was peddling.
Yes.
He didn't seem like he cared about the movies.
No, he did not.
Yeah, he did the whole thing like this one. I scored this one like 2 boobs,
Yeah.
and like it was more like
I can't
crass,
take that
kind of like he
seriously.
did a thing that was called Monster Vision on TNT, and he did show some cool obscure movies actually.
Yeah.
But I didn't care too much for his hostings. I was really just watching it for the movies. and that
I was. My thing was he was occasionally funny, and it was like in the middle. It was like
Yeah.
mildly amusing.
It was a
at
long
times.
ride for a small drink of water.
No, I agree.
Yes.
Yeah,
I agree
totally.
with that.
But then remember Grandpa Al Lewis?
Al Lewis,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
Did on TBS, I think
Yeah.
it was, or something.
Which is interesting that he took that, Grandpa Munster character and kind of turned it into a horror host later in his career. That's kind of cool.
hello, Mark Hamill.
Mark Hamill. What are you talking about?
I bet you.
Butch Patrick did one too.
Wait, what did
He's
he
a
say?
host,
No,
briefly.
I'm guessing that I'm hoping that maybe Mark Hamill in his 80s. Hosting science fiction theater.
Yeah, really.
I'm Luke Skywalker.
Oh, now that you brought up science fiction, I just want to say, he wasn't a horror host exactly, but science fiction host. I'm going to say Bob Wilkins, who I absolutely love.
Right.
Not only did creature features, but after Star Wars came out and everybody wanted
Everything was
science
science fiction, right?
Bob Wilkins also did a show called Captain Cosmic and his Wonder Robot 2T2, which was on at
Channel 2.
Channel 2.
Nice.
And it was on at 4 o'clock. And what they would show is all these great science. Well, it's a 30-minute show, so they did
Episodes
of
of,
like Japanese,
right.
like space giants
Oh,
or
cool.
Johnny
Ultraman,
Sacco.
Cool.
and or Star
or
Blazers,
Captain Scarlet.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, or Flash Gordon, the serials.
And that's what they started with, and that's where I saw most of the Flash Gordon serials,
Cool.
and I love those. So, and what was cool was, as I was so excited when you saw the previews, Captain Cosmic is coming up, or it's this new show, and they would show this guy in this helmet and this kind of reddish outfit and silver cape, and I'm all, oh my gosh, who did they get? And then when you hear him talking, I go, hey,
Yep,
hey,
it's Bob Wilkins. It's Bob Wilkins.
But you couldn't see because he had this helmet. But he had some cool guests. He had Anthony Daniels, who plays
Yes.
C-3PO,
Cool.
was
he
on
had
the show.
George Takei.
Yes, George Takei.
Yeah, he had a lot of people, and my good friend comic Kevin Kataoka. I had this card at one point, but I don't know what happened to it. It got destroyed. He gave me a pristine Captain Cosmic card. Wow. And this
Like
was a card that was
club,
like
or-
it was for the club, and it also had like a decoder thing. And
Cool.
so what Captain Cosmic would do is he would have a message that he'd put up, and you could then decode it with your card, right?
Yeah.
And I remember the first message and the last message that I decoded. Of course, I was probably 16 by now, but that might have had something to do with it. But so the message was, you decode all these letters, and it came out to robots love oily fries. And I just thought, Captain Cosmic, really?
Should be on a T-shirt.
You're better than this.
Now, believe it or not, 2T2, Wonder Robot 2T2 still exists.
Wow.
Yes.
Joe Bob
talking to
Briggs
a guy on eBay?
owns them.
No, Joe Bob Briggs does not own 2T2. He now has a wonderful home in a comic book store in Santa Cruz.
Cool.
And you can go there anytime, and all you have to do is say a little oath to Captain Cosmic and 2T2, and they will give you, Matt, a new card. And
new
yes,
card?
a new card that you, and,
A new old card?
No,
Or a
no,
new
no. It's like a
card?
new card that has all the little Captain Cosmic symbols and stuff. So you can, and they send out little messages every week.
Who sends out messages?
The comic book places.
How?
They email it to you.
They email it to you.
Yeah. Well, when you go and you got to fill out.
It's an
little
old
email
new
thing.
card.
Yeah, yeah. But I was so thrilled when I saw 2T2 still exists. I mean, I was.
But you have to
blown
go to
away.
Santa Cruz.
Yeah, you have to go to Santa Cruz.
Okay.
Is that too much for you?
It is a little much, yes.
Well, I just want to say that 2T2 is still alive. And
No,
well.
I think I might have
Cool.
to do that pilgrimage, I
Yeah.
have to say, because it was a very important show.
Yeah,
to
Captain
all of
Cosmic
us.
and his Wonder Robot 2T2. So, yeah.
Now,
Back-
since then, since
MST 3000. We got to see. I mean, in theory, it is
Well,
a
there you
horror
go.
show.
That is
There you
that is
go.
kind of keeping the spirit alive. That's true.
that's a very, very good observation. I didn't even think of that when we were sort of
Maybe
thinking
one of the
about
best
this.
ones ever.
Yeah.
Definitely, and which started, and I remember it took me a while to figure out that this had been going for a long time as a public access show.
Right.
And it also wasn't a show that you could just drop in and out in. You know, like during Thanksgiving or whenever they would run the longer one. Again, I didn't have cable because I didn't have the dough to have cable. So then when I finally saw it, minute you sat down with an episode, you went the whole 2 hours all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
It wasn't a show that you would just watch a couple minutes and bail on it.
In fact, again, when they would have these marathons on.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah,
They're like Comedy Central's
Comedy
with us,
Central,
right?
Turkey
Yeah.
Day, and I remember
That's
watching
right.
about, I think maybe 12 of them in a row.
Yeah.
Joel, what was the Joel?
They did
Joel
it
Hodgson.
They did it
Joel
online this.
Hodgson.
They did it online this year.
Is that right?
This
Really?
Thanksgiving, they did 8
Cool.
hours or something like that.
Wow.
And that also sort of spawned riff tracks and these other kind of like, hey,
Right.
let's talk back to the screen. And
but they did it. I mean, you can't really get
and Cinema
any better
Titanica, which was the one that Joel did with Frank and Trace.
Which is great if they're, you know what I mean, like because they made that thing work.
Yeah,
you're really not going to get much better than MST 3000.
Nope.
I mean, hitting every note.
Yeah, you know, the only thing that got me about MST 3000 was I'm just saying. No, I'm just saying. You know,
Go ahead.
Listen, no. You got to give me this, okay?
I will. I'll try.
There are some movies which I think are just sacred. Okay, there's some movies that it's like when you start poking fun at.
I know what you're talking about. Because
I think I'm about to agree with you.
When they went onto Sci-Fi Channel, they had Universal's film library and they actually did some classic movies.
Now, I will say this, Sean. This is what. So I had a little issue about them poking fun at my favorite films. Then they came out with a feature film, and they were using the film This Island Earth, which is absolutely one of my favorite films, classic science fiction 50 films. But when I walked into the theater and I sat down and me and like the three other people in this giant auditorium. The movie started, and I nearly wet my pants. And what I felt was they liked it just as much as I did.
It was kind of done with love, because it is kind of a fun movie to make fun of.
And you know, I love that movie, and some of the stuff they did, it just made me laugh. And I'm thinking, oh my god, I think that too.
Yeah, if you truly love the movies, though, I think you can make fun of them that way, but still, because you can still enjoy the movie.
Yeah, you can laugh at something that is a product of its time. It's like I always say, like, you know, if you're going to watch something, watch it with the eyes of the time.
Yeah.
And when I watch any of those movies, that's what I do. But I also, at the same time, can look at it with my modern time.
Yeah.
And like, for example, there's a line in This Island Earth.
Okay.
One of my favorite lines
Okay.
in all of science fiction history.
Yep.
That just makes me laugh so hard.
Okay.
And where Exeter is trying to convince them when they're on the planet to go with him. He's going to save them from the destruction.
Yes.
And the girl turns to the guy and goes, "So what do we do? Should we trust him?" And he says, "I wouldn't trust my grandmother in a place like this."
Yeah, Rex Reason says, in a place like this, I wouldn't trust my grandmother. That's the line.
Yeah. And that made me laugh so hard because it made me think, wow, there are certain places where you can't trust your grandmother. The trusting your grandmother is location based.
Well, for me, now this film that I love so much.
She's great in the kitchen.
The moment for me
Don't leave your
was
purse.
the moment for me is when they are actually in the spaceship flying to Metaluna, and they're looking at the screen, and there's this music that comes up that goes dun dun dun, and Exeter says, "All right, switch off, switch to normal view," and then the music goes dun dun dun, and Joel and the robots go normal view, and I just not crapped in my pants. I just laughed so hard
because they're funny.
I know,
and you can make fun of anything.
That was at that point. I love them.
You
that
guys,
was
you
the
guys are going to absolutely despise me after this, but
somehow he's going to bring back Dawn of the Planet of the Apes.
I can respect what MST 3000 was and what it did. I could never once bring myself to laugh at it. There was something a little too self-consciously clever and a little too smarmy. For me, it was like, let me get friends together and watch. I mean, it was smarter than that. I give it a lot of credit, but I just couldn't sit there and laugh. I found it clever. I could never find it all that funny.
Okay, here's where I take issue. Smarmy kind of means to me like they're kind of showing how smart they are.
There was some of that.
I gotta give them.
No, but wearing a suit of love. Like these guys love this stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but they can make jokes. The only reason why I don't think it's smart, I think it's wit. I think they're just really fucking funny guys,
and all these jokes are coming from robot puppets.
Yeah.
It was tough going for me. I tried. I really tried.
And some of the references you had to know about 4 different things until you got the joke.
But that's beautiful.
That's what I really loved that you made me work a little bit for this one. It's like anything, again, the reason I love MST 3000, it's like the reason I love things, the things that I love, I can never describe to anybody. So if you had to describe MST 3000 to somebody, you really can't. You just
either
find
get it or you don't.
Yeah,
that's it.
But you go, it's robots. Why would I? I don't know, but I love it.
Yeah.
But
there was a scene from the giant leeches, and there's such a great scene where there's a bunch of. I think they're what do they call it when they're dropping bombs in the lake to trying to dragging the lake. Is that what it's called? And they're trying to find these bodies of these missing people that the leeches have gotten. And there's a whole bunch of like redneck guys that are in charge of all of this. And it's the funniest episodes ever because first of all, they do the song that's called I'm a Danger to Myself and Others. And then they show like a bunch of guys that are just these rednecks that are just lying in boats, and one guy takes a swig of some moonshine and and I forget who says it, but they says, "Take me to the Mushroom Palace, my sweet friend Booze."
That's an actual line. That's an actual line.
I was in love with that.
Had you guys ever seen the documentary American Scary?
Yes.
I have, yes.
Very good documentary.
Yeah, it's a documentary of horror show hosts.
Now, you did like it.
I was 50-50.
You're on the
I
fence.
wanted to love it more than I wanted it to be something that maybe it couldn't be. I wanted it to have the kind of this reaction that I had as a kid watching these guys.
Yeah.
I just wanted to be blown away.
Right.
It was good.
I love the fact that they even did it.
Yeah,
like there's
the fact that they even did it.
Yeah,
Well, that's-
made me pretty happy.
That brings me to the idea that, like, why do you think they were horror hosts, at least as we were growing up in the 60s and 70s and part of the 80s, were pretty prevalent? Why did you think this whole idea went away? Like, like I said,
Night
maybe
Live.
It's networks.
Saturday Night Live.
No.
Killed it a lot.
It did kill a couple shows.
Killed
Didn't
a
it kill?
lot of shows.
No, I think it. No, Sean. I think it had to do with for Channel 2 that we were watching Creature Features. What happened is Channel 2 became a Fox affiliate.
And the idea that there's no
the
more
idea of
syndicate,
local
television,
and because it was a local. It took care of like say Oakland, San Francisco to San Jose. It was a big area.
Right.
But once Fox came in and took it over, it's like now they're going to show The Simpsons and Married with Children.
Right.
And,
So, like, the idea of a regional horror host
it
just disappeared,
vanished
right?
because they were thinking globally, like the whole United States. So I think that we lost a lot of our horror
Because,
hosts
like,
around
but
that
back
time.
then it was also a personal thing where, like, you could write into the horror host, or they could like mention your
Yeah,
name on a
yeah.
program,
Right.
and like you could, you literally could be in
You were
communication with them.
there's
right?
a great movie. There's a great movie which actually features. It's like the end of the era of the horror host, which is Fright Night,
Yeah.
where you have Peter Vincent, vampire killer,
Played by the great Roddy McDowall.
And in that film, I mean, it's great with vampires. It's a fun film, but it's at the tail end of his career, basically, as a TV show.
Well, it's also very telling that the really crappy remake of that movie.
Oh yeah,
It's not even a horror.
Well,
host.
it's not even horror. Now he's like a kind of like a Marilyn Manson,
magician,
kind of like
yeah.
magician.
He's a
art
Chris
performer,
Angel type guy,
Chris
yeah.
Angel guy,
Sean,
because they can't. Like, how could they do a movie about a horror host? Doesn't
Sean,
make sense.
I didn't even bother to see it.
It sucked.
because
Yeah,
I,
I'm not a fan. Although I love everybody in it.
Yeah,
not so
good cast. Terrible movie.
if you look at Fright Night today, even with all the visual effects that are practical effects, the monsters and the werewolves,
It's a good movie.
It's
Amazing
a fun,
movie.
It's fun. It's
It
a
is.
fun.
And it's a love
film.
letter to horror hosts.
To horror
and
hosts.
yeah,
Well,
and
that's great.
And there are so many things in that movie that are. You talk about the practical effects, where you've got people melting.
Oh yeah,
and
great
the
monster
big
effects.
bat vampire being destroyed by sunlight at the end. There's just so many great scenes that like there's a visceral element to practical effects that I just wish that I would love to see a movie where they just bring it all back, where they'll do something that's kind of like they'll do stuff with claymation now, where they'll supplement it a little bit with CGI.
Right.
Why not do that movie? Why not do it all practical effects, do a little bit of CGI on the edges, and give us that? Because I love The Walking Dead as much as anybody, but yet every time I see that CGI blood,
Yeah,
I go,
it's
that's CGI
looks
blood.
Shitty.
I think
Yeah.
there might be an effects industry backlash brewing against CGI.
I mean, a little bit.
I hear a lot of complaints about it, and I don't know. I think a lot of self-respecting effects people would probably want to, at least try to go back to it more.
Yeah,
I would love it. I would love someone to bankroll that and make it happen.
Is there another film that has like a TV horror host in it? I'm trying.
horror host?
Well, you were mentioning earlier when we were not doing the show, the Munsters.
Oh yeah, the Munsters. There's a great episode where Eddie Munster he loves this horror host on TV. I think the horror host is Zombo. I think it's Louis Nye. Is that right?
Louis Nye.
Louis Nye is the comic guy from
Yes,
right?
who was it was Sonny Drysdale.
Hi, Steve.
Right.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure
Sonny Drysdale in the Beverly Hillbillies, who would say things like, "Mother,
yeah,
you ruined
that's
everything."
But it's a great idea for the episode because he's a monster. He's like kind of a zombie vampire type character on TV, and of course Eddie's watching him thinking he's real, and he wins some kind of contest to meet Zombo, and of course he goes in and he goes into the makeup room, is like, "Hey, Eddie, here's Zombo," and turns around and it's just a regular guy, and like, "You're not Zombo." Like, I have to put my makeup on still. So it was a great idea, but that was a great kind of like fictional horror host on that TV show.
Well, and also has a lot to do with has a nice connection with Friight Night.
Yeah, totally, yeah.
Like, I mean, that's a little bit of the stretch of that movie. Like, let's go to the TV horror host. He'll know how to kill vampires.
right.
Okay, maybe you are having an episode right now. Maybe none of this is taking
Well, then
place.
we said we're talking before Gremlins 2 wasn't there was a horror show host in it, and it was based on
there?
like Al Lewis or something. Remember, it took place in the
yeah.
building. And one of the guys was doing a horror show, so he was dressed up.
Yeah, that's right. The movie's
Joe Dante's
Yeah.
probably like
That movie is such a
homage.
mess, so-
Well, yeah,
But,
but it's probably his homage to the horror host. As well.
But one horror host I want to mention too that I have to mention that when I grew up with after Chili Billy in the '70s, mid '70s, a guy that I grew up with was Uncle Ted.
Uncle Ted?
Oh,
Yes,
my.
Uncle Ted. It was called
No.
Uncle Ted's Ghoul School, and he was this kind of older guy with a handlebar mustache. He wore a fez, and a tuxedo, and he did corny jokes and magic tricks. And he was like kind of like a dungeon set, and it was great. It was like mid '70s to the '80s. Eventually became Uncle Ted's Monster Mania, but he was like really corny, like old guy, like, and he really wouldn't talk much about the movies. He would just do little magic tricks and stuff in between. But I loved Uncle Ted because it was like double features again, and it was great. So I mean, not many people remember him, but Uncle Ted was great.
Did he have people on his show that did like monster related things or something on it?
Maybe it was mostly just him doing really bad magic tricks.
Matt, I don't know if you remember this. I remember this really well with Bob Wilkins. He brought on this lady who said that she loved to do knitting and crochet, and she would only work on this one piece when she was watching Creature Feature, and it took her about a year to make this one piece. And they brought on the show, and it was a sweater for King Kong. Actual.
I remember
King Kong.
that.
Do you remember that?
Oh, wow,
And it
that's
was
awesome.
massive.
Yeah.
And I remember it was so big, Matt, they couldn't have it on the set. What they did is it was just this black, it was just like a black scrib or something, and they had the big sweater up on
Yes.
do you remember that? And
I remember
she
that.
goes, "Oh, so how long did this take you to do?" And she goes, "Oh, it took me about a year." I'm like, "Damn, that's a lot of yarn."
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah. And you could see Bob Wilkins just kind of inching towards the door. Like, that's nice. Good. King Kong will like that.
And then there was a time, it just shows you a lot of Creature Features I saw on John Stanley's show. He would have people, what he would do sometimes is people who were in makeup or something, they'd be behind the scenes in his dungeon set. He would have a guest on, like someone who wrote a comic book or a book. They'd be talking to him, but then there'd be someone in the background kind of moving around, kind of spooky like. And there were these two girls. I think they were in their early 20s, and they had like monster makeup and monster hair and these tattered shirts. Well, they weren't wearing a bra underneath.
Nice.
And what happened was...
Speak slower.
Okay, what happened was, as John Stanley explains it, they were on the show, they were in the background, and they're kind of like, they had like a giant dinosaur bone, like they're pretending to gnaw, and they're kind of moving their body, and the rips in their shirts are kind of opening a little bit. Well, I didn't notice anything, but the following week, John Stanley says, "Well, our censor guy isn't here today, so we're going to show you a clip from last week's show that you weren't able to see."
What?
They showed the clip, and what it showed, I couldn't believe it because I was like 15 at the time, and I don't think this is proper, but it showed them, the girls were writhing, and then all of a sudden the shirts would open, and their breasts actually came out of the shirt.
Okay,
Yeah.
I need
Do you
to
remember this?
Yeah, I
Do you remember this?
I don't.
Oh,
But-
are you serious,
I
Matt?
don't, but I'm now living it vicariously through you.
I'm downloading it right now.
And I'm not sure if I'm comfortable with that. But I need to point out something to John Matta.
Yeah.
is that also you have to understand TV2 was a strange bird because TV2 would often show movies with nudity.
Really?
Now understand that these movies were playing like late at whether it's like 9:30,
syndicated
10:30
television,
and when
right?
Stanley showed this, it was late. It was after
was like-
11:30.
But
But you know how I would stay up.
TV2 would play the movie Walkabout with Jenny Agutter from Logan's Run.
Yeah.
Who, I mean, when I saw Logan's Run, I knew that Jenny Agutter and I it was going to happen.
The woman.
It was going to happen. Damn the law and restraining orders. But so then I discovered this earlier movie that she did where she couldn't have been more than 18.
God, yeah, 17, 18.
But she is full on nude.
It has to be 18, Sean. I'm sure she was
Titties
18.
in the movie.
It's Australia. Their laws are
But
different.
played on
No,
TV2, and TV2 would do that. They would play movies, and there'd be a little flash of nudity, and then you'd go,
Little
okay.
flash.
And I don't know how they got away with it.
No,
but,
I don't either.
But whoever is still remaining
Yep.
in the world of TV2, they are in my will.
Matt, to this day, that is an image that is just burned
I
in
can
my
only-
brain.
I can only
I'll
imagine.
never
Yeah.
forget.
If only we could see nudity on television today.
Impossible.
I like the fact that, like, you know,
Okay, this is like 1979, 1980. Okay,
three
John.
of us work at Playboy, and we're like, remember that scene where they almost saw a breast?
Almost saw
See,
it.
it's everything in context.
That's
Right,
that's
right. But
another-
yeah.
I mean, it's not only that local and regional channels are pretty much gone, but television has changed. The way we watch television now, we can just pop in a Blu-ray or a DVD. A few weeks ago, Svengoolie on MeTV or Svengoolie Jr. was showing a Hammer movie, and I have it on DVD. And I was like, well, why am I sitting here watching commercials? I could just put in the DVD. But it felt more comfortable.
It's Svengoolie is
That's
there
right.
with you.
Yeah, you got your
Actually
friend.
sitting through the commercials because you would see.
I really do love that he is keeping that alive. Like
Yeah.
I actually love MeTV. It's like I find myself watching it too.
absolutely.
It's like a lot of the old shows that they show there. I do have on DVD or Blu-ray. I have the whole seasons, but it's like there's something.
watch it anyway.
Slightly
yeah.
off point, but I'll get right back on. But because of MeTV, I had never watched an episode of F Troop,
Oh wow, really?
and I laughed out loud.
Oh yeah.
I was like, "This
yeah.
is
I love
genuinely
F
funny."
Troop. Yeah.
classic horror host.
We have to
You
have
know-
to mention though, if we're talking about horror hosts, there is one. I think John and James know this, is that there is one not really a horror host, but in a way it is. At least it's a part of an anatomy that is the host, and that is the later Chiller Theater that it was this claymation six-fingered hand,
Yeah,
right?
it was on WPIX in New York, and it was
Yep.
just called Chiller. And it
That's
was,
right, just Chiller.
Really eerie music.
It wasn't even music; it was more like sound effects.
It was sound
like-
effects.
like-
it was like almost like the zombie moans you hear in
or
Romero
like the
films.
Forbidden Planet sounds. Those
electronic.
like just weird.
And a six-fingered hand would come out of the grave.
But it was like a very sparse
Yeah.
kind of like it was almost like all white, but there's like a little swamp
It was almost like a
spot of swamp, and then
Mars.
one little tree, and then like you just it was like a weird otherworldly place, and this hand
And the hand, six-fingered hand comes out and puts the clay letters Chiller out. They spell
it spells
that.
it out, right?
And then at the end of the movie, the same hand comes out and just takes the letters back into the ground.
But also,
How they do that?
Yeah. But when it comes out, it does that. This voice goes chill.
And you know that's enough to hook you forever.
Oh,
Yeah,
totally.
It's fantastic.
we were just researching that before the show, and apparently Rankin Bass produced that thing.
Wow.
Famous Rankin Bass.
Yeah.
Right?
And you can definitely see it on YouTube. 15 seconds.
Can you give us a Chiller thing? I got 40 minutes.
How many frames is that?
Do you want Bass to do it or me? Because I don't care. I'm working on a Rudolph.
Yeah, my wrists are gone.
you know,
But I like the guys that are still doing it on the internet.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Yes.
there's probably about a dozen guys. Count Gore Vidal still does it.
That's right. Yeah.
There's about a dozen
Dick
guys.
Dysel.
Yeah, that are still doing it once a month at least. They're still doing shows.
One of the things I love now, Sean, about with the internet now, Bob Wilkins and John Stanley. There is a Creature Features website now,
Right.
and you can actually go and get. There's something called the Best of Bob Wilkins, the DVD, which I have, which has all these great
Lovely.
things
It's great.
on it. But also John Stanley has one that, get this, he it's like he has actual shows that includes commercials from the time.
Wow,
That's pretty great.
cool.
That's
and,
pretty
and
great.
Some of the films that he has, I mean, I think they're in public domain, but still, it doesn't matter because if you want to see a creature feature show from like 79, 1980 with the commercials, you can see it, and that's
Well, that,
what
of course,
I love.
is part of the experience watching horror hosts. You sat
it's
through
the only
the
way to
local
watch it.
commercials, right? Yeah, right.
Yeah, so you guys can go check it out, creaturefeatures.com.
That's
Or
amazing.
Stanley, yeah.
I mean, when Bob Wilkins was sort of at the end of his life, I guess he was suffering from Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
And his wife and everybody around him were trying to ask for donations to help him. And
Yeah.
I got a lot of my friends to come in and donate. And I went to like Kevin Kataoka and Sue Murphy and all these San Francisco people, and they donated money because Bob Wilkins was your guy. He was your host.
He was well loved.
And
really
he was really well loved. And so when I went on the site, and there were a lot of things that they were trying to sell to make money for this. One of the things was the Best of Bob Wilkins.
Yeah.
And then I came upon another DVD that they put out that was Bob Wilkins Interviews Hollywood,
Yes.
which is really great.
He interviews Boris Karloff.
Boris Karloff.
Which was like
Leonard Nimoy. And
Leonard
stuff?
Nimoy.
Yeah.
But my favorite one was Richard Pryor.
wait,
Wow.
Wow. And
forget
it is
that he interviews Richard Pryor.
He,
Forget about that
he
one.
interviews Richard Pryor, and talk about two worlds colliding. And it is pretty amazing. And you know where both are coming from, but it was funny because poor Bob Wilkins is like he starts off the interview with Car Wash had just come out, and so he's talking about Car Wash, and he says, "Rich, I just want to just tell you that I just saw Car Wash, and I just thought you really stole the show." And Pryor goes, "Stole the show. Stole the show. I mean, there was a lot of really good people in that movie and a lot of really great actors. I mean, I me stealing the show. I don't know what that even means." And there's a little pause, and Bob Wilkins just goes, "Well, I just wanted to say that I really liked you." Anyway. Fantastic, and but he is one of these guys that I mean, as we've said before, every town has their guy, and not long ago we were at Monsterpalooza, Son of Monsterpalooza, by the way,
Monsterpalooza.
A great horror convention.
great horror convention here in Burbank,
Beautiful downtown Burbank.
beautiful downtown Burbank, and there was
How hot was it?
it was so hot.
So, Son of Monsterpalooza.
Son of Monsterpalooza had
You were there.
I was there, and there was a guy that was I had never heard of before, but a guy named the Vegas Vampire.
The Vegas Vampire.
Now, had you ever heard of this guy before?
No, I'd never heard of him.
But he's apparently he was a guy in Vegas
Yeah.
for a long time.
Yeah.
He had been around for a while.
And because he was in Vegas, apparently a lot of the big Vegas acts stopped by and said hi. He told this story. He was telling me this story because I guess no one else was talking to him. In
the
the
poor
booth.
guy. Well,
But I-
to be fair,
it's-
the look on his face was, "Please go away." But,
I was talking to him, and he actually had Sammy Davis Jr. had stopped by.
wow.
And I guess he had become good friends with Sammy.
In Vegas, not
Yeah.
at Monsterpalooza.
No. But I had a great time chatting with him. He was great. The Vegas Vampire.
I'm guessing too. Was a lot of guys really wired out of their brain.
Probably.
Looking for somebody up at this time.
Well,
And they're watching the TV. Hey, let's get on the Vegas
man.
Vampire show, man.
Hey man, the Vegas Vampire is still up.
Well, if you think about it, it's
Frank.
a late night show. They're showing monster movies, and I'm sure like after their dinner show, they go, hey, let's go and check out. They find an old horror movie on, and there's the Vegas Vampire. So
Round up 11 hookers. We're gonna go see the Vegas Vampire.
I mean, the Vegas Vampire sounds.
I'll bet
kind of, it's kind of rare. It's kind of unique, kind of rare. But there is something. Is there something, John? You told us about
the
where you can
horrorhostgraveyard.com is a great site where it goes through every horror show host. It's really tremendous what
It's like
they do.
encyclopedic, right? I mean, it's like
Yeah,
it lists every horror host like ever.
that you can think of, tape of all of them, or whatever's left of every kind of guy to see. And then you also get to see the guys that are still doing it. Like we're talking about, there's, I think, like about a dozen guys that are all
new
doing
guys too, right?
That are all doing internet shows now.
There was a guy who, and I'm trying to remember if I turned you onto this, Sean, or you me. but there was a guy named Dr. Creep, Barry Lee Hobart from Dayton, Ohio.
I think you told me about him. Yeah,
And
yeah.
a really great guy who, one of these guys that, you come across these compilation tapes.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
And this guy's signature thing was like, he would go, hoo ha 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 ha, hoo ha 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 ha, hoo ha 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 ha. And I'm sure that the kid that heard that first hoo ha 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 fell in love with this fucker.
Totally,
the
yeah.
minute.
I mean, there's
that
a
came
lot.
on the
There's
screen.
like a lot of our love for these horror hosts. Like I'm discovering horror hosts now that existed back then. Like there's a guy, Morgus the Magnificent, who was a very popular New Orleans horror host, who I think is still around and does stuff. And he even had his own movie. It was a feature-length film, independent film called The Wacky World of Dr. Morgus. It was like involving spies and a secret formula, and it's great.
What period?
Like 60s, yeah.
Really?
I think or maybe
Why
late
don't you
60s,
have this?
early 70s.
Why are
I
you
do.
sharing-
I do have.
You
it.
do have
it, of course.
I knew you wouldn't let me down.
There's a New York based guy called just The Creep. And it was like this very dry, monotone guy who wore sunglasses and a suit and kind of, introduced horror films. And that was like in the mid 70s.
And this guy was just a douche.
Yeah, he was just like very. But I remember him. I remember him really well. Again, like all these guys, like
Cleveland was big too. I think.
yeah.
Night
Cleveland had a
Owl
lot,
and
Yeah.
I think when there's a lot of places where there's not a lot to do, and it was funny too. Like you're saying, all the guys were either from the marketing department,
Right.
or they kind of were weathermen, kind of like, or jack of all trades, and they didn't really know what they were doing. And then again, you couldn't get VHS tape from somewhere else, so then these guys would just do something that was.
Yeah,
Totally
like
their own.
like programming directors say, we're gonna have start showing horror films on Friday nights. Who can we get to just do something?
And that's part of the charm of these things is that some of them seem improvised. You know,
Yeah,
you don't know
totally.
what's coming up because it's not really.
There's nothing really slick about
the talent
these
of the
guys.
host,
yeah.
though,
Yeah,
yeah.
They're winging it.
And I wonder, though, the whole marketing department kind of aspect of this. You think, Larry, that when John Stanley and Bob Wilkins would give away, because I remember them doing all those free movie passes.
Yeah, free movie
that
passes.
They knew how to do that, hook
Yeah.
up that whole thing.
They
'cause
did.
I don't know how many films I saw for free. I mean, God, I'd mail away for these tickets, and my mom, who is the greatest sort of sci-fi nerd. I mean, a really good mom to have when it comes to that kind of stuff. I mean, I would get these tickets and we'd go see like the Golden Voyage of Sinbad and At the Earth's Core, and that was all because of Bob Wilkins and John Stanley.
That's
And I
awesome.
guess a nice sort of merger of the marketing and love of horror.
That's the other thing that was great when those shows existed. When films would come out, you would have people who were in the film. They would be like for example, I remember when Ray Harryhausen and Charles Schneer were doing Golden Voyage of Sinbad. They actually were going through the Bay Area and they stopped at Creature Features,
That's right.
and
Awesome.
were interviewed by Bob Wilkins. And what was cool is, this wasn't videotape. They actually shot them in 16 millimeter.
That's
back in
right.
the day, the days of news. Back
Yeah.
and
the original sort of press junket.
yeah.
Yeah. That's just kind of what's so kind of in some ways so tragic about some of these guys now is that so many of this footage just doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
Like I mean, now everything you can get on internet and DVD and Blu-ray, but like.
just
A
take
lot of the
over.
actual programs that, like, you remember watching the movies in that local station, but that broadcast and those little interstitials with the horror host between commercials, like, a lot of that stuff is gone. It's
Do you remember, Larry? There was a time when they put out there was a Creature Features companion.
Yeah.
And in the back of that thing, you could order videotapes.
Videotapes, yeah.
Of Creature Features from Bob Wilkins.
Yeah.
like himself?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they were like, and you would I got like 3 tapes of EP.
Yeah,
I remember that. I got those too.
Yeah,
Yeah. And it's great. And you can't get that stuff anymore, but I'm so happy that I have it even in that quality.
Yeah.
Because it's just show after show. And on one of those shows, and I have to point this out, he would also, not only would Bob Wilkins do the show, but he would also do these specials. And then one would be about the Twilight Zone or science fiction movies or just science fiction in general. And one of them had a segment, it was Star Trek. And there was a segment about conventions. And I'm looking at these tapes I got from Bob Wilkins himself. And I'm watching the special on Star Trek on conventions. And here comes the costume contest. And there I am in San Francisco dressed as a Klingon.
How old are you?
Are you
And
serious?
I don't know. I've got to be, 11, 12 or
Matt,
something
I've gotta
like that.
see that.
Yeah. And there's like, it's a brief glimpse. And I'm like, oh my God.
Matt, I've got to
I'm
see
somebody.
that you've made it.
Yes.
You're on Creature
I
Features.
actually made it to Creature Features. Ever so briefly, but I'm there.
Matt,
We've got to put that on our YouTube
yes,
channel.
and
Yes,
Matt,
we do. Yeah.
my hat is
I will
off to
find
you.
it. I will find it.
That is amazing.
I think you really need to wrap the show up on this. I don't see how they get to. It really came full circle.
Yeah, it really does, Matt.
A little
This
boy
has
in
been
front of his
great.
TV ended up on it.
This has been great.
Yeah,
Well, I am a Klingon at heart.
and I want to tell our listeners too. Just like seek this stuff out. See, this is to a certain point. It's a lost art, like John has said. Some people are keeping it alive on cable and internet, and the whole idea of the horror host is something that's kind of special, and that we all grew up and kind of really a lot of the horror hosts we saw is what kind of made us, like
Yes.
the stuff that we are today. It was they were kind of our shepherds who kind of like brought us into this world.
It's true.
And get beyond the fact that everything has to be glossy and super high quality. The fact that there's a one guy against a green screen or a set or
A
whatever,
clumsy like cardboard set.
exactly, is the charming part. It's the thing that should make you love him.
Yeah, it's the thing to look for.
Well, there's a lot to look for.
Or her.
Isn't there?
And absolutely. And let's remind our listeners they can find us on YouTube at Monster Party TV. Friend us on Facebook. Also at Monster Party TV.
Yep.
Follow us on Twitter at Monster Party HQ. And if you're hearing us on iTunes and you like us, please write a review. And if you don't like us, why are you still listening?
No. Even if you
Really?
don't like us, no, because I want to know. I mean,
Yeah.
tell
Okay.
us.
Okay.
If we,
I know.
if we left out your favorite horror host, let us know. That's what I like.
And hey, on our Facebook page, we always post lots of pictures. We have lots of pictures up right now from the Son of Monster Palooza convention.
Yeah.
We're always posting stuff. Please feel free to leave comments and tell us what you guys like.
And we promise to put up even more stuff for your enjoyment.
Tell contact us. Let us know about your favorite horror hosts.
And John Matta, do you have anything to plug right now?
Sure. The only thing I kind of like doing is drawing on napkins. I got a site where I draw a comic on a napkin every day.
Every day.
I've done 800 of them. It's been over 3 years.
100. You've had a lot of celebrities, too.
Yeah. Kurt Russell, Eric Stone Street, Nia Vardalos, just weird people that have been very nice to do it. So it's been
And they're all hilarious. It's great. And you should check out the site. And
What's it again?
mattanapkin.com.
Matta.
MATTA.
his name.
Matta the napkin.
His name is John Matta.
I know, but I wasn't sure if maybe it was something kind of funny on the internet, like a MADD or something. I didn't know. I just wanted him to spell it. That's all.
All right, okay.
It's very. Listen, I think you kind of overreacted, Matt.
You know what?
Yes, he does that. He does that often. Trust me.
I'm not going to lie. I got a problem with rage.
See,
Come to the site if you want to draw one. Just draw one. Let me know. People like doing it.
Sounds good.
Sounds great.
Thank you for asking. And you can all go fuck yourselves.
guys, this has been fun.
Yeah.
It has been. John Matta, we are so happy that you could grace our humble podcast.
John.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm a huge fan, and it was a pleasure to be in the room with you guys on one.
Thank you so much.
Thank
So
you.
let's wrap this up.
That's right.
I am Matt Weinhold.
I am Shawn Sheridan.
I'm Larry Stroth.
And I'm James Gonis.
Keep America strong.
Keep the horror host alive.
Can you feature that awful creature? Can you feature that ugly creature? Creature features.
To quote Paul Williams, tasty.